determined.
Hello and welcome to the program. I am Ekene Ndulwe. The National Assembly says it is disheartening that out of the 36 state assemblies, only 11 have considered and voted on the 44 constitution alteration bills transmitted to them. The National Assembly Joint Committee on the Review of the 1999 Constitution stated this at the committee's joint briefing.
On the 1st of March 2022, the National Assembly voted on 68 constitutional alteration bills. 44 were passed by both chambers of the National Assembly. On the 29th of March, 44 of those bills were transmitted to state assemblies. 24 state houses of assembly are constitutionally required to pass the bills, but 6 months after, only 11 states have considered and passed them. The Joint Committee attributed the delay to the position of Conference of Speakers of State Houses of Assembly, which insisted on the inclusion of 4 bills, including state police.
State police. 2. A bill to establish State Judicial Council. 3. A bill to streamline the procedure for removing presiding officers of State Houses of Assembly. And 4. A bill to institutionalize legislative bureaucracy in the Constitution. It is legally and constitutionally inappropriate for the Conference of the Speakers to use the 4 bills as a quid pro quo to act on the 44 bills the National Assembly has transmitted.
At this point, the Constitutional Review Committee made an appeal to Nigerians.
Please permit us to use this opportunity to appeal to citizens, civil society organizations, interest professional groups, and institutions to prevail on the Conference of Speakers to withdraw their threat to truncate the Constitution amendment process.
We'll be ready to commence the process of making sure that the autonomy for local government, the autonomy for the judiciary, and the autonomy for our legislature is actually approved.
Why would government pass administrative autonomy for local government and deny financial autonomy?
Abia, Akwa Ibom, Anambra, Delta, and Edo states are the state assemblies that have voted on the bills. Others are Kaduna, Katsina, Lagos, Kogi, Ogun, and Osun states.
Moving on to the budget defense exercise, which began during the week, the Ministry of Water Resources is to carry out 6 water projects worth 147.7 billion naira under multilateral and bilateral water projects in some states in 2023 as part of measures to reduce flooding. The Minister of Water Resources, Suleiman Adamu, stated this at the 2023 budget defense, where he also implored state governments to spend more on water resources and sanitation.
Another season of checks and balance between the executive and the legislature has taken off at the National Assembly. Budget defense, this time for the 2023 fiscal year. Among the early comers is the Minister of Water Resources, Suleiman Adamu, who appeared before the Senate Committee on Water Resources to give account of the ministry's spending in 2022.
This year's flood, I can assure you, we cannot blame it on Cameroon, to be sincere. We'll continue to have floods on the river Niger and Benue basins until all those tributaries, even when they are damped, there will be, because the other component that I have not mentioned is that for hundreds of years we have been deforesting our land.
He provided justification for the 262.2 billion naira proposed for 2023, as he listed the construction of Kashimbila, Gamovo, Mangu and Farinrua dams as some of the projects that will need urgent attention in 2023.
And these projects are projects that are on the Water Resources Master Plan. This master plan has been in existence since 1995. But lots of projects that ought to be strategic projects that need to position the water resources sector, have not been implemented.
Honourable Minister, I think you've answered some of our questions, and in the last 3 years, this government has done so much in the area of water, just like other sectors.
Meanwhile, the Chairman, Senate Committee on Ethics, Public Petitions and Privileges, Senator Ayo Akinyelure, said the commencement of the hearing on the alleged public misconduct by the Chairman Code of Conduct Tribunal, Danladi Umar, has been suspended because he has approached the appeal court.
And I fixed another meeting to continue the case today. Danladi Umar never suffers that he has gone to Court of Appeal before now. Until yesterday, he brought a notice to his lawyer, filed in an appeal court.
The Federal High Court sitting in Abuja had in April 2022 ordered Danladi Umar to appear before the Senate.
And here is an overview of some other MDAs that appeared before various Senate standing committees for the budget defense exercise.
13.4 billion naira is the national priority budget for the Federal Capital Territory in 2023. 4 billion of this will be spent on the Greater Abuja Water Supply Project, conceptualized 5 years ago. The project, a bilateral initiative, is expected to improve water supply in 26 districts in Phase 2 and 3, which include Gwarimpa 1 and 2, Utako, Dutse and Lokogoma.
Some of the projects that are going to be implemented, that has to do with the Mpape Shere Galui Road, as well as a number of other interventions under our Satellite Towns Development Authority, as well as the Greater Abuja Water Supply Project, which is a bilateral initiative with the government of China to enhance water supply in the FCT.
The committee made submissions on how to improve on the various sectors of the FCT economy.
You can set up agro-allied industries at the rural areas, in particular the areas like rice milling plants, cashew processing plants.
One great favor you can do for Nigeria is to ensure the commencement of property tax, which was already in the law that we have passed and assented to by Mr. President. Let us start property tax as from January.
Construction of solid waste transfer stations in the FCT and the completion of 6 area councils stadium facilities are to cost 1 billion naira each.
Since I came to the National Assembly over 15 years back, we've been having issues, and even before I came, the issue we had was, the budget, the performance of the budget. Now, let me start from the, the one that concerns us most, first and foremost, I should say, not concerns us most, but first and foremost, the constituency projects. Constituency project is important because it is because of constituency project that you get every sector, every part of the country covered. Otherwise, I always say that, for instance, in my own local government, where I come from 1999 to now, if not for constituency project, there's no federal presence. And so it's critically important that we have this constituency project. What we've been having in the past is that you put the project there, but sometimes you get less than 50% of the funding. Buhari has improved on that. You sometimes, like presently what is going on, or in the past 1 or 2 years, you find that it's fully funded. And so that is meaning that every part of the country will have an impact of governance. The president had, before he took office, described oil subsidy as a scam that should be dealt away with. Now, this is the 7th going to the 8th year of his administration. We still have it there. We have spent, I'm not too sure, but I think it's nearly 2 trillion, already on oil subsidy. So why can't we have the political will to do away with it? It's a scam. I agree with him when he said that before he came into office. It's a scam that we have not been able to do away with it up to now, beats my imagination. And we have not seen anything in the budget speech, which is like a State of the Nation speech, to see that he really wants to do away with that. And so those are some of the concerns. But we hope that he succeeds, because it's for the betterment of every Nigerian that the president succeeds before he leaves office. Because even if he succeeds or not, the worst hit will be the ordinary people on the street. Okay, so it is our prayer. As a National Assembly, I think we'll give him all the cooperation, as indeed we have been given, to the extent that we attracted the label of a rubber stamp assembly. We don't mind if we are called a rubber stamp assembly, insofar as that will help the president to achieve what he sets out to achieve. And so we'll do it to the very end of the tenure of this administration.
And for the legislature, it's very important that we maintain this January to December budget cycle. Just to speak to us briefly on the importance of maintaining that.
Of course, it is. You see, if you look at the legislative agenda at the beginning of the 9th Assembly, both chambers, the House of Reps, and they made a commitment to Nigerians that we will bring it back, the January to December year, financial year will be brought back. And it has, since it started happening, we have not reneged on that. I don't believe that anything will stand in the way of doing that. That's why we are happy that at least the budget proposal has been brought in early enough, so that we work on it before we proceed on Christmas break.
Well, thank you very much. I will talk to you in 2 tongues, one as a senator and one as Yusuf Abubakar Yusuf.
Okay.
As a senator and also member of the Finance Committee, we sat down and talked about MTF, and then the fiscal strategy paper, where we looked at the assumptions underlying the budget for 2023, and then MTF is for up till 2025. So we have looked at it and we have arrived at parameters like the benchmark of about $70 per barrel, and then about 1.65 million barrels per day production. And then we have also spoken about inflation rate of about 17.5% per annum, and we also spoke about the interest rate is also fixed around that much of about 16%. So we have looked at it in terms of those parameters, and we believe, as our engagement with the Mdas in respect of our revenue of about 6.8 or something trillion, and also a budget base of about 19 trillion, and then a loan of about 10 trillion thereabout. So we look at it, and it is the belief of the Senate that we should be able to meet these parameters. But as Yusuf, I have my own misgivings as to whether we are going to achieve these parameters or not. One, with the kind of recession that is being projected that will happen next year, it may be very difficult for us to achieve the 1.65 million barrels per day. And also, with the recession, there might be glut, there might be less, demand for the crude oil, and therefore we might not be able to export, up to 1.653 million barrels per day, and we may not be able to sustain, the $70 per barrel. So it's going to be a very, very tough year. And secondly, I cannot understand how, we will have, a borrowing, to be much more than, our recurrent. It's also an issue for me. And then thirdly, whether we can be able to borrow at all. With recession coming up, with our foreign partners who may consider, loaning money to us, whether they will be able to do that or not, vis-a-vis, the recession or the anticipated recession. So, and again, what we have found out, now the president, instead of presenting the 19-point-something trillion, he presented 20.15 trillion. And this time we're a borrowing of about 10 trillion. And I have found out that the recurrent expenditure of federal government is about 8 trillion. For me, the cost of bureaucracy is high. To spend 40% of the budget on recurrent, I think it's too high. And also the issue of subsidy. For me personally, I don't see any reason why we should retain subsidy in whichever form, in the pricing of our petroleum product or the PMS. We should find a way of blocking the borders so that our petrol does not go beyond the borders. For us to be saying we are consuming 68-point-something million liters per day, it doesn't make sense to me at all. What they are saying that they are counting on evacuation. What NNPC is evacuating, it does not mean that it has to be what we consume. Nobody in this country today who can tell us that this is the consumption of PMS in this country, but we are relying on the evacuation. And the measure, what the GMD or the chief executive of NNPC told us is that the moment they observe the scarcity and there are lines on our petrol, so they increase. If there's no scarcity, they decrease. I don't think that is what is good. So also remember, it has just been discovered, a lot of oil theft that is going on, in the Niger Delta. And we have just discovered that for 9 years, there's a pipeline that has been, been siphoning, our crude oil, into the high sea. So with all these, our issues here and there, I doubt if we are going to meet, our expected, revenue. And if we are not going to meet, and then we have problem with our expenditure. Loan may be difficult, income is challenging, and then we are not looking at our expenditure. So we should put our expenditure right down, because the cost of bureaucracy, and that is why it is always 100% met. It's always 100%. So that means whether we like it or not, 8-point-something trillion cost of bureaucracy will be disbursed. So 40% will be disbursed where we do not have money. And then subsidy, it's about 3.5 or so, trillion. So that one too, is coming to about 20% of the budget. So we have 20 plus 40, we have 60% of the budget going into managing bureaucracy or financing bureaucracy and also the subsidy. So we are left with 40%. The 40% is to meet statutory, to meet, a payment for loans and what have you. So for me, it's going to be a very, very, very challenging year. We might not have, much money for capital. And if we do not have money for capital, that means we are not expanding. That means we are contracting. That means we are just consuming whatever we are generating. For me, as Yusuf, is going to be, a challenging year. So we'll see how it goes when the committees sit down with the MDS, how they will agree, how they will move in these areas. So it's we need to see.
All right. So distinguished on a lighter note, the Senate has the Senate President said intends to pass the budget before Christmas. Just tell us how important it is to maintain this January to December budget cycle.
Well, thank you very much. Since we came in the 9th Assembly, we made sure that, we passed the budget before the end of year. So I'm sure, we intend to do that, and we are already, on recess as far as plenary is concerned. The timetable for engaging the MDS, is out, and very soon, various committees or subcommittees of the appropriation will sit down with the MDS and then, engage ourselves and look at the realities of what each, MDA is presenting to us. So I think there's a possibility that we will pass it before the end of the year.
All right, and you touched on it just a moment ago about the oil theft. I know that you're a member of the ad hoc committee that's facing oversight. Just tell us briefly what your findings are and what's the next step.
Well, I may not go into details, but what we have found out that for about 7 months or 8 months that the Boni terminal, export terminal, has not exported one barrel of crude oil. Why wouldn't they do that? Because they say, well, they would rather shut the wells so that less stealing will take place, or stop stealing the pipelines. But we also found out that the pipelines are not exposed. They are inside the swamp and inside the creeks, and it will be very difficult for you to monitor what you do not see. So and also I think the theft, subject to what we have just discovered, we thought that the theft was not much, but now what with the discoveries that is now coming up, it means that the theft too must have been very, very large. But by and large, we have to also take note of the environment. We have to take note of the indigents there. We have to take note of how these things are being done. When you appoint contractors, surveillance contractors, I think we must involve the communities along the pipelines, and that will give us a better value so that they can participate in protecting these pipelines. So our report is not yet out, so I don't want to discuss much more, but we have been able to even go to the high sea, where we went to Total, where we visited what they do. Even them, the capacity, their export capacity is about 2 million barrels per day. 200,000 barrels per day, but it's falling to about 120 barrels per day. So these are also challenges that all of us will have to put our hands on this. But by and large, even the security, the security in the maritime must be beefed up, and then we try to find who are the real culprits. The Navy has the responsibility of guarding our maritime. The police are there, the soldiers are there, even our Air Force in one way or the other. So even the monitoring agencies, the upstream that we are talking about, so I think there are a lot of things that need to be done, and within a very, very short time. But by and large, I want to add this. NNPC under the PIA, should be seen as a commercial entity, such that federal government should not have any reason to participate directly in the oil and gas industry. So for me, it will be a mistake for federal government to still retain so much control, over NNPC directly. That is why a lot of people in this country believes in subsidy. Because if it is NNPC, whether you are going to import or whether you are going to produce it, you produce it at your own cost, and you sell it, at the cost that will give you a margin to operate. So for me, that is the position I would suggest, and so that this subsidy thing, should go once and for all, and we'll have, money, as it were, for other developments.
Well, that concludes this week's episode of the program. Thank you for sharing your time with us. There will be more on Senate 109 next week. Till then, I am Ekene Ndulue. Bye for now.